It's a pleasure to be with everybody to kick off this panel. I'm Keenan Reed. I am one of the co-founders of the Black Women's Congressional Alliance. So if you all are doing your internship, we actually allow interns to be a part of the programming while they're interning in DC and even virtually. And now because of COVID, we do a lot of programming online. We started the Black Women's Congressional Alliance much for the reasons that we're doing the intern palooza, right? To get people acclimated and give them a sense of community and get them well prepared for their opportunities on the Hill. And we wanted to give you some good insight. How do you stand out? You've got a busy congressional office that has so much going on throughout the day, and staff who are going to be pulled in a million directions. All right. Why don't we start with Heejin for the first question with APAICS. Heejin, I think I see you. How are you? In your experience in supporting interns through APAICS, what tends to surprise you the most as they start their time in Congress?
Yes, my name is Heejin. I'm the program associate at APAICS, Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. But yeah, in our experience, one of the first things that surprised people is how small the Hill is and the Hill staffer community is. One of our pieces of advice, and also I'm sure advice that many other fantastic speakers will talk about today, is how important networking is because of how small the circles in DC politics and just life on the Hill is. Everybody knows someone somewhere. One of the surprises that some of our interns learn is it is not uncommon for someone as a Hill staffer who especially works in on the Hill for several years to work for multiple different offices or committees and so forth. So that means that it's great to build as many connections as you have because you don't know someone working in one office one day, you might work with them in a different office some other year, or you work for one person 1 year and then you'll find out that they've moved on to a different office and you might be interested in that office too. So you never know what happens. People move around, and it's great to keep up those connections. And then a second piece of advice that we always like to remind everyone is that staffers are people too. So sometimes people forget because, a lot of people will talk about Hill internships as and just the Hill overall as a fast-paced, competitive work environment. Well, not competitive work environment, but competitive to apply and get the position. So everyone has a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome. They're all these people are so talented and smart. I would never work here and things like that. But, of course the staffers are great and the teams, amazing stuff comes out of really small teams. That are in charge of, issues of national importance. But they're people too. They like to have fun. They want to help you. They were an intern at some point. They want to support you. So, those are some things that have surprised interns and also double as our advice for people to keep in mind.
That was great advice. Diane, you've worked really closely in the past with the Committee on House Administration. When you think about the educational requirement for Hill internships, how should interns start thinking about what they want to learn, what they should be learning from the experience?
Well, thanks for that question, Keenan. Just as a reminder, Diane Hill and I'm from the Partnership for Public Service. And we work with interns a lot, primarily in the federal government. We're branching out here into the congressional place. But as a congressional intern, these are the things that I think about. You want to ask yourself, why am I here? What's my mission? What's driving me? So did you come to experience DC? Do you have an interest in the legislative process, strong interest in politics? Just get a sense of what matters to you. And then I think the second thing that's really important when you're thinking about, what you want to learn from your internship is ask yourself that question. What did I come here for? What do I want to learn? What do I think I want to learn? And it's kind of cool to write it down, put it in writing right now. And then when you get to the end of your internship, see how it changed, because it will change, because you can't possibly know all the things that you're going to learn being an intern. The second what that you want to ask is, what do I have to offer this office? What are my skills? What are my strengths? So that you have a really good sense that's clear about what you can offer. And then when you get an opportunity in that learning space, Keenan, I think it's really important, is to look around and see what needs to be done. You might want to make an offer to say, I can fill in here, or I can do that. Don't wait. Look and see what needs to be done. I always think fill a need, see a need, fill a need. And I think that's pretty important in a congressional office, because you're going to see a lot of things happen and a lot of things unfold. And even if you're a little bit uncomfortable, you should volunteer for things, and you should be open to learning, and you should be open to new experiences. So you want to pay attention to how you might be able to do that. I think the last thing about the learning is how I choose to be. How do you choose to come to the office every morning? Come in and be an asset to your office. And I think that's really important to your learning. And you'll get more opportunities that way with an attitude of how do I come than anything else. Thanks, Keenan.
And that's great initiative and being an asset. I love that. Those are big gems that our interns can take with them into their roles. I was going to go to Brad next. Brad, we are all working in the virtual environment. And as someone who's working virtually now, can you talk a little bit about why it's still worth it? It's not as easy to distinguish yourself not being face to face, but you still want to use this experience and get the most out of it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Keenan. There are several ways that interns can make the most of a virtual internship and have, almost as good, if not better, of an experience than in-person interns. And the way that I see it is that you want to focus on the 3 C's. And the 3 C's are care, communication, and culture. And when you talk about care, we're talking about making sure that you're caring for yourself and that you're caring for your colleagues as well. And so asking at the beginning of your internship if there's anything that you can do to make the transition to a remote internship easier. Touching base with your fellow interns outside of the office, making a point to get to know people in a virtual setting. Connecting, having your boss or your supervisor connect you with current or former interns as a virtual network. Someone that you can, virtually rely on to support, and also just making sure that you're being as accessible as possible for your internship. Now, also, it's important to remember to care for yourself. So doing simple things like taking a drink of water, getting up, walking around, going for a walk outside, making sure that you are not just glued to your computer all day, every day. The second C is culture. And this is, making an effort to instill a work culture that is still there even though you're working virtually. So making sure that you're on any kind of email distribution lists that are going out to staff so that you can stay in touch with people. Making sure that you, are either initiating or a part of any kind of virtual gatherings that are happening. A lot of offices right now are doing virtual social hours, virtual lunchtime lectures, Friday happy hours, making sure that you're virtually staying connected to the office in that way, and you're staying connected to the work culture. Attending virtual DC events. There are so many events right now that are happening in DC virtually, and it's a great way to kind of level that playing field and kind of that accessibility barrier that may have been there before for district interns and interns that are outside of the office. DC is more virtual than ever, and so it's a great opportunity to join some events that you might not have been able to do so had you not been in the office. And lastly, on culture, making sure that you are, focusing on networking as much as possible as well. Everybody knows DC is a networking town. And so, making that extra effort to say, hey, would you want to grab a virtual coffee sometime? Would you be able to chat with me 15 minutes virtually? Most of the time, if not all the time, people in DC are going to say yes, because people in DC like to help each other. And we know that that's the case. Lastly, I want to say on the third C, communication. You want to make sure that you're communicating with your colleagues as much as possible. So if your supervisor allows it, doing a weekly one-on-one virtual meeting just to connect, make sure that you have enough on your plate, that you're working, that if you don't have enough on your plate, you can have more work or ask for more work. Making sure that you're keeping it simple. You're using the communication tools that the office recommends, whether that be Microsoft Teams or Slack, whatever it is that you can communicate most efficiently with your colleagues. And lastly, just making sure that you have clear protocols in place and that the office has provided you with these protocols for when you have questions. If you're working on a research project, are you going to the LA? Are you going to your direct supervisor? If it's a project on press, are you going to the press secretary? Just making sure those lines of communications are open and you know who you're reaching out to. those would be the best ways that I would say would be most amenable to interns who are working in a virtual environment.
I love the C's, and what I've heard from you is immerse yourself into the culture. Don't just do the internship and take what's given to you. Jump in and be a part of your office culture, but also be a part of the DC culture. I was going to go to Taylor next. Taylor, we've talked a lot about standing out and some of the tips and tricks. I wanted to drill down into some of the more finer details, because sometimes it's about like the very small things that you can do to make yourself stand out. And it's just that little bit of extra effort that can make someone remember you and recommend you for an opportunity much later in your career. So Taylor, tell us about a time, or do you have any examples of staff that, as when you were a staffer, interns that have impressed you by going the extra distance?
Again, I'm Taylor Swift, not the singer, just so everybody's not confused if you can't tell. I'm a policy advisor for Demand Progress. And when I think of standing out, whether when I was an intern trying to work my way up the ladder or when I eventually became a staffer, a lot of it boils down to trust. Whether I can trust myself to do the responsibilities and the tasks that were given to me and assigned to me, or if I were a staffer, can I trust that intern to complete something that I asked them to do? And so that's where I really started, and I feel like a lot of the panelists have really indicated this, is you have to care about your mental health and who you are, and don't lie to yourself, and don't, because that'll show your colleagues and everybody else in the office. You know, sometimes you bite off a little more than you can chew, and that kind of it doesn't work, and it kind of it'll allow people to be less inclined to maybe give you more deliverables in the future. And so if you go in with a problem-solving attitude and try to figure things out yourself without taking too much of a burden and biting off too much, it's quite a successful strategy, at least in my opinion. To that, I know Brad mentioned understanding the lines of communication. That is so critically important. Who you're going to be reporting to on a daily basis, who you can talk to on a weekly basis about concerns that you have, questions about assignments, all of those things are crucial. A little point to make it better, I would say, is that oftentimes, even when I was an intern, I would go to the staff assistant, or I would go to the LC, or even in LA with questions 3-4 times a day. And I realized over time, why am I doing this? They don't have the time to listen to every single one of my little questions. Maybe instead, I can create a list of problems that I'm having and go to them with 4 questions at a time. You know, the information that staffers are receiving on a daily basis is a lot. There's a lot going on, whether it's a committee work week, or there's bills on the floor, or there's a markup coming up. So much is happening for everyone. And sometimes staffers just don't have time to answer those kind of questions. And so if you're able to have a list of those kind of questions, then it'll be a lot easier for you to get those kind of answers. To that point, I think it's extremely important for interns to log everything that they're doing. I remember I kept a little notebook with me at all times, whether I was going to briefings or answering phone calls or taking on an assignment, whether it was a memo or something like that, writing down every single one of my daily tasks and then going over it either on Friday night or the weekend to kind of prep myself of, okay, I was able to accomplish these tasks. Then, like Brad mentioned, be proactive and ask in advance of, hey, how can I help with this? How can I take the next step forward? Instead of maybe doing phone calls or writing a letter, maybe I could do a policy memo on something instead. And then finally, I think a really important piece, right when you get there, see if you can ask about a style guide or how the office writes certain letters or talks to constituents. Those kind of parameters are going to be extremely important for you to be successful right away. And again, earn that trust from day one. So those are the pieces of advice. Hope that helps.
A couple of things I picked up from one, Taylor Swift is the rock star of our world. I stole that from Mercy. You are the real Taylor Swift to us. But I wanted to flag for y'all something that Taylor made me think about. There's a generational difference that will happen when you get back in person. You all are much younger than some of the people you're working with, and so it may be like cool to use your phone to take notes. But for me, I always loved it when the interns would bring notebooks, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit old school. So that was a pro tip that when Taylor was talking, I thought, yeah, anybody that met with me that was interning, I would send them back to get their notebook if they were trying to talk to me without writing something down. Because if I was spending time with you, it was very important. So lots of gems in what Taylor said. So I thank you for that answer, Taylor. And next, we're going to go to Akailah. So Akailah, we're going to talk to you a little bit about pressure. We're asking our interns to just do their very best, be an asset, take initiative, go the extra mile. Don't wait. Taylor talked about don't waste time. Like have your questions ready. We went through the C's to be effective from Brad. Lots of gems. But that can be a lot of pressure, right? So, and when you're interviewing for an internship, it can be a very long process. And so, once you are finally there, do you have any advice for interns managing that stress and persevering through the tough days? I know staffers are not always, they're busy, so they're not always warm and kind. And it can be tough on an intern, especially in a virtual environment. So would love your advice on that.
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everyone. It is great to have you here. My name is Akailah Jenkins McIntyre. I use she, her pronouns. I am the director of the Leadership Institute at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So I will say that something that is really important, and this is actually the advice that I have to give to you all, is the same advice that our interns who have gone through our programs offer to interns who are coming in. And that is that other interns really are not your competition. And I know that that may be advice that can be contradictory to others, but they can really serve as a support system if you make it possible to do so. And so as it relates to taking care of yourself, you will be in a constant place of stress if you are like, all right, how do I get ahead of this person? How do I get ahead of the next person? In addition to managing the general fast-paced and ever-changing nature of the Hill, determining what you have in common with other interns or those who are situated similarly to you in the office and how you all can support one another is absolutely something that can help manage that stress, because those are other folks who are having a similar experience to you. And so they will be able to offer support and insight. And so that is absolutely something that I would say. The other thing, and again, I truly credit to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation interns, because they are the ones who I take these kind of tips from. I think that another way to reduce the stress is sometimes interns come in thinking that they are going to be writing remarks from the very beginning, or they are going to be contributing to major legislation. It is really important to manage expectations. And I think that also helps with reducing stress, because sometimes otherwise it can feel like if you were in a place of answering constituent calls or showing up to meetings and just taking notes, sometimes it can feel as though those are not things that interns who come in with really high expectations want to be doing. And it can kind of make people feel a certain way about those things. I think it's important to remember that there is honor in all duties, and that in most offices, at some given point, everyone is doing something that an intern has done, because offices are often small and there are a lot of tasks that need to get done in a given day. So take pride in every single thing that you do within an office. I completely agree with the advice to write everything down and to take pride in everything that you do, as opposed to competing with others or trying to climb the ladder and get ahead really quickly. Because an internship, at the end of the day, is just that. It is an internship. It is an opportunity for networking. It is an opportunity to stand out. And I would argue that one of the best ways to stand out is by taking great pride in what you are assigned to do and asking for more work, as others have named, as opposed to consistently comparing yourselves to others. You can stand out by just doing you and doing the work that you are doing with fidelity and pride.
It's really smart, Akailah. Just say, just do your own thing and work the internship for what it is. That's really smart and sage. And I hope everybody wrote it down. So I'm going to Kelly next. Kelly, we actually have interns on, well, folks on who are considering whether they should take an internship. People who are on the fence about making this decision, what would you say to them?
So this is something that I actually personally struggled with when I was getting my start in DC. I started school as an art major, which is a far cry from where I am now. And when starting, applying for internships, it seemed really disparate. Like it seemed very, very disconnected and led to, what other folks have mentioned, kind of a self-created pressure cooker where I was worried that I wasn't following the right path or the path that made the most sense. If someone is on the fence about submitting an application for an internship, I think the first thing to know is that you are incredibly capable. There is, imposter syndrome, and many times folks talk themselves out of what can be a really rewarding experience. And the need for you on Capitol Hill is there, and it is urgent. If it's not you, it is going to be someone else sitting in that seat who may or may not share the same life experiences that you do and be able to connect to constituents the same way that you can. So that is my first piece of advice, is just do it. Second one is, even if, say you are working as an intern in a Senate office and you are talking to constituents every day and you're thinking, you know what, I don't think this is what I want to do. You are still getting so much identity capital from that experience. Even if, during your internship, you decide, I want to do press, I want to do comms, I want to do policy off the Hill about a very specific, policy area, you are gathering so much beneficial information about how the Hill works, about real struggles that people are facing in your home state or your home district or a district that you have ties to. That is really, really important. The Hill is a weird place. It is, 535 small little ecosystems that run completely differently from each other. And something that is so beneficial to folks is knowing how that happens, how the sausage is made, to use a really disgusting term that I don't love. But so you will leave with integral experience that could also give you more information about yourself and your priorities. The final thing that I'll say is that when College to Congress is running, its congressional internship programs, and we have our cohorts and our students here in, summer and now spring and fall, something that we hear as one of the top things that folks walk away from an internship experience with is a network. And oftentimes it is that network that you build with staffers on the Hill, where, you have someone who can write you a letter of recommendation after, or can point out jobs that, are interesting to you, fall in line with your interests. But also, there are so many interns who are also in DC, or also, the lights just turned off in here because I haven't moved in a while. But there are so many interns in DC and virtually who are looking to make connections. They are here for the summer or here for the fall and don't know anyone in the city. And you can walk away from an internship experience with lifelong friends. And just really dear connections, both professionally and personally. So I will say, even if you're on the fence, there's nothing but just learning more information about yourself and making new connections that lies ahead.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much for all that good advice. We've come to the fun part of our program where we're going to do Q&A. I do see a question that I thought was very astute from Laura Guerrera. How does networking and your learning goals that interns set for themselves translate in a virtual environment?
I'll take a crack at it first, Keenan. One of the things I think that's important when you're teleworking is to understand that you're going to need to reach out and you're going to need to be connected to people during the day. Excuse me. And we've had interns, Hill interns in our office who have worked both. And one of them wrote a blog recently on the partnerships website. What you need to do is have coffee chats. So you need to be able to reach out to other people. And you can ask folks in your office, who should I get in touch with? I mean, you can ask them for suggestions, but don't be afraid to start like with your other interns, don't be afraid to ask the staff assistant or the LC, could we take just a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes for a coffee chat? You want to make sure that you have a sense of who people are and appreciate the people, as well as learning from them and getting advice and thoughts from them. So I think you got to be a little bit ready to reach out, and you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable, and start your coffee chats with questions that are matter to you. You know, you ask somebody their background, but also be willing to listen and then respond, so that it's not like an interview. You want to make sure you have a back and forth and you gain a rapport. But it's going to take some time, and you're going to need to schedule them in. And you want to put that on your list of things to do as you start out. Don't let it slide. You want to start right away, getting in touch with people, seeing how you can bring them in. And again, that how can I help you? How can I work with you? Those kinds of questions are going to help you, especially when you're teleworking, because then you're going to meet with somebody and you're going to learn a little bit about them as you're doing that. And you're going to be specific.
What was your most valuable experience as an intern? I guess what I'm trying to glean from everybody is some pro tips and some something that people can take tangibly and apply to their internship today that they may, had they not invested their time today to join us, they would not have otherwise known.
I would say, if possible, to find a mentor on Capitol Hill if you can. And I know that that's more challenging in a virtual environment. But one of the most meaningful experiences for me during my Hill internship was that I was able to find a mentor in the press secretary early on. And she and I are still in touch today. She's reviewed cover letters for me. She's served as a recommender for me. She's given me advice on, what kind of paths I should pursue. And this was all just from my internship on the Hill. And so I know you can't magically assign someone and be like, you're my mentor, and rely on them for everything. But see if there's someone you could seek out on staff, someone who's open to talking with you, someone who's open to giving you advice, that you could kind of rely on, past your internship as well. It doesn't have to be your supervisor. It can be, but, someone on staff who seems, amenable to helping you out and being there for you, because it's really important to have mentors as you progress through your career.
To piggyback off of what Brad said, I completely agree. One of the most interesting things that I always found, either as when I was interning or when I was a staffer, was just getting to know people's stories, getting to know their backgrounds. I know all the panelists have mentioned, in DC, everybody's coming from everywhere. And so building those relationships, understanding where people come from, on both sides of the aisle, really helps humanize the experience. And so one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got during my first internship was kind of create a series of elevator speeches about yourself, not necessarily in an interview style, but just knowing how to present yourself and your story and kind of what you bring to the table and the value that you want to add, in an enthusiastic way. There are a lot of interns that go through congressional offices every year, but if you can have that special standout story and really believe in yourself, that makes a lasting impact on staffers. I can still remember interns that I talked to that had just super creative stories, and that forms a bond. And even when I was an intern, I reached out, told people my story, and then I told them what policy areas or press that I was interested in, right? I was interested in education policy, or appropriations, which not everybody is. But because I was telling staffers that I was interested in those topics, they would then connect me to other people in other offices that also dealt with those policy issue areas. And then you get to meet someone else, you get to explain your story again, and then you get to talk about issues at a deeper level. And so creating that network through personalization and understanding kind of what you're interested in, I think was super valuable both as an intern and as a staffer.
Answers. Thank you for that. Thank you for those, Brad and Taylor. So DC is a town of unwritten rules. Are there things that our interns should know, not to do, particularly in a virtual environment?
Something that I forget who said this, and maybe just raise your hand if you're the one who said it, but DC is a small town. It is like a large place technically, but it is a small town. There are so many times where staffers will meet someone who knows someone in another office who like knows the intern there or whatever. And because the Hill is so based on the relationships that people are cultivating, you don't want to cultivate bad relationships or kind of give folks a reason to have like a reputation precede you. And that could be something that is, caused by many different factors. It could be that, you've broken trust with folks in your office, or you have gone out on a limb and said something representing the member or misrepresenting your job that then gets back to your supervisor. There are, kind of many ways to have a reputation precede you. But I will say that in so many TV shows, I'm thinking like House of Cards or whatever, folks portray people in DC as being like conniving and, out to like get their agenda done at any means like possible. And that's really not how it is. And if you come in and you act like I'm misrepresenting myself and, I'm going to be a real big shot and I'm going to be like take no prisoners kind of like worker, that will kind of not work out in your favor. Folks in DC, I think, make friends and cultivate relationships and generally operate with niceness that surprises a lot of interns who come here. And I just think represent yourself truthfully, be an honest person, because you don't want to tell two different stories and then have the folks you told those two different stories to talk.
Yeah, definitely. DC is definitely more beef than House of Cards. It's definitely more us just doing the best we can. Something I wanted to draw attention to and would love the panel's advice on is some of the interns that have made a great impression on me, they continue to do it well beyond their internship. And I really think that that's a pro tip. So I wanted to just, throw that out to the group to see if you all had any insights that you could share.
I think that's a great point, Keenan. I think you really need to, as you're meeting people, keep track of who you're meeting, listen to their stories, and then when you leave, don't consider the chapter has ended. Keep touching back every couple of months even, or maybe once a quarter, and let folks know where you're at, what you're doing, not a long diary of these are all the things I've done in between, but just a short little, this is what I'm doing, and pay attention to what they're doing so you can comment on it when you come back to them, because that's going to be more impressive to them if you're following work that you did in the office or you're following issues that were important to your member or your senator. So just don't hesitate to stay in touch. There's a little bit of a fear when you leave about, I can't reach back out. If I wait too long, if it's 6 months, it's too long. That's okay. Just make the effort, stay in touch, and it will benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Diane. I have some interns that I think the way they did it was they kept a spreadsheet of all their contacts with all their emails, and they sent regular updates. Like, I'm enrolling in this class this semester, and I'm doing this and that. And that was one way to do it. Well, Diane's answer plays really well into a question I have here from Dakota. Dakota wants to know, they're a recent graduate, and so they're looking for advice on how to transition to a full position. What other advice do we have for someone that is currently seeking a job right at this very moment?
So this is something that in our past, College to Congress cohort, most of our cohort was going straight into a full-time position. And something that we found to be the biggest differentiator between folks who, had multiple job offers by the end of their internship was how much they networked with a purpose over the summer. If folks, a lot of people will come into an internship and say, okay, by the end of this internship, I want to have at least 30 coffees. And they go out and they get 30 coffees and they give everyone their resumes, and then they, continue to do their tasks as an intern and kind of leave it at that. You want to make sure that as you are going out to coffees, you are following up with folks. You are going and meeting with people who either are in the networks that you think are important to your job search or have the career that you want. You don't have to be super creepy and research every single thing about them, but you want to have a good idea of the advice that they can give you, and the reasoning for the coffee, and then how you want to follow up that coffee with an actual working relationship. I'll also say that, to Taylor's point before, and my little plug in the chat, crafting your story, why you are here, why it is your, mission to serve the folks of Kansas or South Carolina or whatever, that is so integral to getting people to go to bat for you. It's, when folks are recommending folks for full-time jobs or even fellowships or other internships, they are saying, hey, I believe in this person. I think they're a good, intern. I've seen their work. I know what they're capable of. But they are kind of staking their professional reputation on that as well. And you don't want to be a person who recommends someone and then the person you recommended to comes back to you a few months later and they're like, oof, I don't think that was the right choice. So you want to make sure that you are going into coffees, showing your capabilities, showing that you would rather be here than anywhere else. And also, I will say something that sets apart interns in their jobs on the Hill is, you're never too good to take out the trash, or you're never too good to refill the printer, or to hop on a phone, even if it's not your turn for phone duty. You lean in where you're needed and people will see that. I guarantee it.
This is something that was discussed earlier as it relates to standing out in a virtual environment specifically. Something that for me, I have always kind of taken note in my mind. There are a few things of particular interns, especially in this Zoom world, Microsoft Teams world that we live in at this point. Interns who are camera on, who are clearly taking notes, to speak to what Keenan said as it relates to having something physical, always stands out to me. There have been calls that I have been on where interns show up, and even if it is the most mundane thing that we are doing, you would really think that it was a meeting with the president. You really would, because they showed up dressed, ready, and enthusiastic. Everything that they did was, I am an ambassador for fill in the blank. And they consistently acted accordingly. And so that, for me, those are interns who I do not forget, because they are consistently showing that they are willing to really go above and beyond. The second thing is that as it relates to keeping in contact with folks as you work to build your network and find mentors, I would also say to add people on LinkedIn. I never mind being added on LinkedIn. Some people have differing opinions on that, but it does, for me, help to jog my memory about interns when I see updates about their lives popping up on the LinkedIn feed, and it does just help to build networks out in general. And so as you are finding people who you are interested in what they do and would like to connect with them, it also doesn't hurt to read up on people and learn a bit more about them in case you would like to connect with them again, whether it is the universities they went to, where they have previously worked. Any of those things can serve as kind of bridges as you work to find people who can help you navigate where you'd like to go moving forward. So LinkedIn can also be helpful for that.
I did see a question from Princess, who wanted to know if we have all of our panelists have had beautiful journeys, but there's probably some things you would have done differently. They always say hindsight's 20/20, so you have the benefit of looking back and seeing what you could have done a bit differently. And
I think the first thing that comes to my mind was, oh no, it was during my first internship where I sent an email and had the recipient filled before the email was finished. So my grammar wasn't good, the substance wasn't good, the attachment wasn't on there, and I'm going to get into more of this in a session tomorrow about email etiquette and style guides, but definitely making sure that you're paying attention to those little details when doing assignments, doing work, and like everybody is saying, conducting yourself, whether it is virtually or in person. That still haunts my brain, and it was years ago, and I think about it and I cringe. So just making sure that you take a little extra time to make sure that everything is good to go, rather than rushing to try to get something done quickly to impress someone, because the recipient would rather have it done on time or a little late and have it done correctly than have it rushed and have it done incorrectly. So that's probably the biggest thing that I wish I could have done differently, was not send that email.
Yeah, I feel your pain, Taylor. I'll jump in and share a story. Before I got to Washington and worked as a Hill staffer, I was a tie buying intern. I was in the men's buying office at Macy's. And so I put $25 off. I put all the 20 off in the off column instead of taking 25% off. So for a day, in all of the Macy's stores in Florida, you could have gotten men's ties for $2.98. So I went to my biggest stores and hand wrote the prices so that they were correct. What I was so embarrassed. I cost my business a lot of money that day. But what I got back from the president of our company and our visa, from our interaction from our CFO, was they were impressed that I owned the mistake and that I came up with a few ways to remedy it, and that I went and I just was upfront with it. But, coming forward and thinking through how do you correct these actions and being upfront about it, so that people can move forward, I think it earns you a level of accountability.
Well, I don't necessarily have, oh, Marcy just said it. She said exactly what I was going to say. Literally word for word. I was just going to say, do you really need to reply all? Because I have seen so many things go awry on reply all emails that should not have been reply all. And furthermore, when you are sending emails, should these be BCC'd emails that are being sent out, as opposed to CC'd or in the 2-line emails? It's just something that I would caution people about, because there have been, I cannot count the number of times where things have been sent as reply all that should not have been, information for everyone that sent things for a loop. And so to avoid potentially causing confusion and or chaos, or just generally clogging people's inboxes unnecessarily, I would really caution about the reply all versus no.
Reply all is my worst nightmare. It gives me like heart palpitations. I check the sender and recheck the sender. So that's a very good point. One other gem I picked up in our conversation here, Taylor is doing a session on style guides. I wanted to point out that not every office has one. And so if you go to his session, you're going to learn how to do it. The other thing that I picked up from interns that are people that I've come to adore, when we didn't have things like a style guide, they just wrote it and invented it. They didn't say, Keenan, do you need a style guide? Because I'm busy running around and thinking about a million things, but they just produced it. So that's something that y'all can take away right away. Go to Taylor's session, go to your office, check it out, see if they even have one, and then just create it. Creating content and producing things like that is so invaluable on the Hill, because many times Hill staff are so busy doing their jobs that they don't have time to brief to actually refine some of that work. So that's one more way you can stand out, y'all. All right, we're winding down. We're getting very close to 4 p.m. I want to give it to the panel to give any final thoughts, and just also thank everybody for allowing me to be a part of this fantastic discussion. I was taking notes too. We can always grow and get better. And I love the feedback we've gotten today. So I see Akailah's going to have a jump. So Akailah, thank you for being here. Heejin, did you want to give us any final thoughts?
No, just once again, so glad to be here and be around so many amazing people. I'm going to drop into the chat more links about our programs in case anyone's interested, but so excited on behalf of everybody who will be either applying to or doing an internship. Congratulations.
Awesome. Kelly.
So happy to be here, and you all can reach out to programs at collegetocongress.org or Kelly, Kelly, at collegetocongress.org if you have any questions about job searching, whatever. This is our bread and butter. We are very happy to help.
Amazing. Brad.
Thank you all for taking the time to listen to us drone on today. We hope it was helpful. And I think the one thing that I would say would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to take that internship that seems like it's outside your comfort zone, or maybe it's an internship that you weren't planning on getting and you applied anyway, and you're unsure if you're qualified or you want to take it. Just take it. You never know where your career is going to bring you, and most of us, I think, that are on this call today probably never thought we'd be on this call today. So, just don't be afraid to take chances and make mistakes. And I wish you all the best of luck during your internships and the best of luck if you're applying to internships.
Fantastic. Diane.
I'm going to second everything Brad said. And then I'm going to just tell a quick story. Kelly made the comment, don't be afraid to empty the garbage or do whatever. When I was a staffer for a congresswoman, I walked into her office and she said to me, darling, you think these shoes need to be polished, right? And I said, oh, absolutely. And I went to grab her shoes. She said, no, I'll polish the shoes. I just want to know whether they need to be polished. So everybody in the office does every job. That's kind of my point. So don't be afraid to do those jobs. It's not going to make you less than. And it makes a difference how you approach it.
I hope the advice helped. Enjoy your time. And if you haven't applied and you're thinking about it, just do it. Like Kelly said, it's the chance of a lifetime, and you'll learn so much from it. So